fiercest hurricane to strike Texas since 1961. It destroyed homes and buildings and left some 300,000 people without power. But the worst could be yet to come in widespread flooding, expected to last for days.
Palm trees moving, boats rocking, even a canopy that's supposed to be protecting boats was blown off there. And you can see the surge getting closer and closer to the road in that video. That was just outside his house in North Padre Island. There's also this video from Corpus Christi, Texas, taken from @Gelamo850 from his home as Hurricane Harvey was making landfall. This video was taken from his apartment building, and the pier outside his home that's out there in the backdrop there actually was torn apart from this storm.
This is the seawater apartment complex. It's basically just a lot of sticks right now.
It doesn't look good, unfortunately, as we look ahead. This storm is going to stall, and it's going to continue to bring unprecedented rainfall across Texas. And I just want to show you the evolution of this storm from Wednesday to Friday, when it became a monster Category 4 hurricane making landfall. The first time we've seen a Category 4 make landfall across the U.S. mainland since 2004. Also want to make mention here, we have a tornado watch in effect until 1 p.m. local time. And I think if we zoom in, we have a tornado warned storm right now in the Beaumont area, north and east of Beaumont. So with these landfalling hurricanes, with these tropical systems, you've already got the rotation from the counterclockwise motion. And sometimes we see these weak tornadoes, but they can still pop up. And that's why we have the severe threat ongoing through tonight for tornadic activity. So watching this. Now, watch the European model. This is one of our reliable forecast models as we go further out in time. And that's why I want people to not let your guard down and not say this is over and we're just going to be dealing with a rain event, because this model actually shows this storm hovering Sunday, Monday, and then as we get into Tuesday, coming back into the Gulf of Mexico, and then perhaps making a second landfall around Galveston. So that's why this is almost unprecedented. Meteorologically, we haven't seen something like this, and when we're talking about storm rainfall totals of over 50 inches, this is going to be life-threatening, catastrophic, and a potential disaster in the making as we go through the next couple of days. I mean, we've never seen storm totals like this. They actually had to add a new color on the graphics in the National Weather Service because we don't see 50, 60 inches of rainfall. And then as you go up towards Houston, 16, 17 inches here. And again, so don't let your guard down and listen to your local officials, listen to your local forecasts. We're going to be talking about the storm well into next week. Liz, Leland, back to you.
Yeah, I just think it's unbelievable, Janice. I mean, I've only been covering hurricanes for the better half of a decade, but I don't know if there's been a time where I've heard you heed these type of warnings, because so often the system does move out, or it weakens maybe a little bit more quickly, and we just don't see the sheer amount of rainfall. So it is unprecedented, at least like I said, it hasn't been decades and decades, but it's been quite a few, and it's fascinating and scary. So
in some cases, a year's worth of rain.
Now to one of our reporters who's in the heart of the action. It's ABC's Matt Gutman, who's in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is being hit hard. Matt, what are you seeing right now?
Hey, Dan, pretty much more of the same. The wind, another band is just coming through right now. You can see my cameraman, Juan, is having a hard time stabilizing in this wind. He's basically like a sail because of the camera. The rain coming down sideways. Again, there's debris pretty much everywhere we go on the ground. I'm going to have them turn around. Prosperity Bank apparently lost the sign, as well as there are traffic lights down, there are trees down, there's all sorts of debris in the road, nails, 2x4s. Shards of metal, very dangerous. We've obviously had parts of the hotel come down, kind of sort of shattering plexiglass all over the street. Still very much dangerous situation, as Rob and Ginger and everybody have mentioned, this is not nearly over yet. And one of the things that we have been talking about is not only the economic toll of this storm, but also the emotional toll. You tend to think of numbers, you know, 210,000 people without power here in Corpus Christi. You think 8,700 people in Rockport, obviously without power, but possibly in jeopardy. Tens of thousands evacuated all over the coast. But yesterday, I got to speak with one woman and her husband and their 2 kids, Danielle and William Weeks. Now, she's due to give birth on Tuesday. She has to have a C-section here at the Corpus Christi Hospital. They were trying to evacuate, but they couldn't get out of town because she had to have this procedure. They wanted to leave. They just moved back here from Colorado a month ago. And as we're getting blown around, I want to show you a clip of this interview that we had with her. It started rather jovial, you know, the kids playing in the hotel room that they had to rent before her surgery, her C-section on Tuesday. And then we got down to the brass tacks of it all. And did you guys lose us?
No, we got you.
We gotcha.
And then, anyway, we want to take a listen to this interview that we had with her.
You have your hands full here, Danielle.
Yes.
What? Where do you guys live? Where are you from?
We live in Port Aransas.
So there's a mandatory evacuation in Port Aransas. But you guys came here?
Yeah, well, I'm due to have my baby on Tuesday via C-section, and so it's kind of dangerous for me to travel very far.
But you're kind of here with the hurricane right outside.
Yeah.
In your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine that you'd be having a baby in the middle of a hurricane?
No, not at all.
Hopefully it's after. Hopefully it doesn't try to come early, because we don't want that.
Good news is you're right next to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right? It's right down the street.
Red Cross here, so
Right, okay.
we at least have some help if something does happen.
I mean, but does it make you nervous seeing what's going on outside your window?
Yeah, very nervous.
And what about your home?
We actually live in an RV, so we unfortunately had to leave it on the
Wow.
land. So we're pretty worried that we won't have a home to go back to.
So sorry.
You know, it's so disturbing to hear that, and you think, this is just one story. There are so many people who have similar tragedies awaiting for them when they come back to this coast and they find whatever is left of their home. Hopefully most people will not have suffered significant damage, but that's not what we expect at this point. We expect so many people to just have to go through, you know, a very trying period in the coming days, weeks, and as Ginger mentioned, months ahead. It's going to take months for this part of Texas to recover, guys.
Yeah, Matt, and of course, unfortunately, we are still in the thick of it. There is so much more to come. And speaking of being in the thick of it, Rob Marciano is just on the northeast side of where Hurricane Harvey came ashore, and he is still dealing with heavy winds, heavy rain. It really doesn't look like it's changed in the hour and a half we've been checking in with you, Rob. It looks horrific.
No, it hasn't. And actually, I thought maybe this time when I came out a few minutes ago, I could maybe peek around the corner, and I didn't make it but another 10, 15 feet. So if anything, it's gotten even worse. And it just reminds me that when these storms come ashore.
Do we have anything else to say?
I can imagine what happens there is, and I was actually really impressed with how long we've had Rob this morning, because I've been in lesser hurricanes, in lesser wind speeds, and our systems go down, and we lose everything. He's been able to hear us. We've been able to hear him. That's pretty incredible. And he is back. Yeah, he is back.
Rob, we lost you for a moment, but pick it up if you could.
Yeah, so I know, it is impressive, isn't it, Ginger, that we've been up this long.
Yes,
we didn't have the good fortune last night, and hats off to this crew that has to deal and work in these conditions and keep the gear dry. The audio is spectacular considering, and I should point out too, look, the media, we walk a fine line of hypocrisy, don't we? I mean, we tell you to be careful, don't go out in this storm, but yet here we are. I want you to know that we take every precaution that we can. We just want to give our viewers, and certainly those that are outside the zone, a sense for what these storms are like and to try to do it as safe as possible. The last thing a meteorologist wants on his epitaph to read is that, whether man or woman dies of stupidity in a storm. So we're not out here to grandstand. We want to give you a sense of what this power is. And every time I'm in it, I'm awestruck over and over again of the power of Mother Nature. If I had to describe walking through this, it's like somebody holding a blanket, two people holding a blanket on either side of you, and just pulling you back. And that's the force of the wind. So, and not to mention the insane rain that hits in the side of the face. So Ginger knows all about it. It's a visceral experience, that's for sure.
And I see, Rob, that you are flanked by those large posts. I know for me, I'm always concerned about flying debris, so those two things are certainly keeping you safer. Did you happen to, I know you didn't come from home, but did you happen to bring an anemometer, or can you estimate any of those sustained winds by you? Because I know we've seen gusts that were close to you at landfall that were 132, but can you estimate for us?
Well, I did, you're right, I kind of parachuted in here from another trip, so I don't have all my gear, but I've managed to borrow an anemometer, and you know how those go. They're just not that accurate. You've got to be at the right angle, you got to be holding up at the right spot to get a real true accurate. And one thing that's for sure is that even an experienced storm chaser, you always tend to overestimate. It's just human nature to feel like, oh man, this has got to be blowing 100 miles an hour. No, this is, as ferocious as it looks, is, maybe hurricane strength, but likely not. Likely 50, 60 miles an hour. So you can imagine what this looks like on camera, what it's doing to my body, double it. And that's what came on shore when the eye wall struck. The area just south of here. That's the power.
Rob, while we have you, I just want to bring on screen, if we could do a split screen here between you and ABC's Matt Gutman, who's in Corpus Christi. These are two men who have covered their fair share of hurricanes. And we should also say that the folks you don't see, their crews, their camera and audio crews, the folks who make sure that we get a signal out of there through our satellite dishes, those folks are also extremely experienced as well. And while we have you both, Matt, let me ask you, compare this, if you would, to the storms you've covered previously.
I think I understood your question, though. It's kind of raining hard and windy hard. I've experienced a number of hurricanes before. Some of them actually next to Rob when he was still at CNN. So, we've experienced a bunch of these together. And I want to ask Rob a question, because one of the things that seems so remarkable and unusual about this one is just how long it is lasting. I was in a Category 2 right in the eye of the storm in Ocean City, North Carolina 2 years ago. Powerful 110-mile-per-hour winds, but because of the speed of the storm, it whipped through there going, the storm was moving at about 20 miles per hour. This is so much slower. And Rob, it just seems to last forever. What kind of impact do you think that is going to have on this part of Texas?
Well, the duration, long duration event, just like you're talking about the rainfall, the more you pile it up, the more damage it's going to do. So what you are experiencing now, what you were getting yesterday, even heavier, you compound that over several hours, if not a half a day or a full day, and it just wears on the people and certainly the infrastructure. When the sun comes up now, and when it eventually is safe enough to drive, which in this area still won't be probably close until the noon hour, there's still going to be debris on the roadways. So it's not like we're going to be able to get in our cars and just kind of cruise around and start our reporting. We're going to have to get out of our cars at times, move debris off the roadways, and that's what first responders are going to have to do too. That's what the officials are going to have to do just when they make their first pass around to see if there are people that need help. So there's so many things in the storm that you don't think about, that you take for granted in everyday life, that's going to come to bear when the sun comes up this morning, Matt. And you're going to get it. You're going to get it before I will, as far as the ability to roam around. But you're right. The duration of this event is certainly mind-boggling. The fact that we haven't seen one in over 10 years reminds us of just how powerful they can be. That's for sure. It's unbelievable.
Hey guys, I can barely hear a thing, so I'm going to toss it back to you in the studio in New York.
I can only imagine. These are difficult stories to cover on so many levels, but
so difficult.
Not the least of which you can't hear.
I'm so impressed at how well we've all been able to communicate. The fact that they were able to talk to each other was pretty remarkable as well. And did you notice Rob's voice is kind of going?
Yep.
I mean, he's shouting through that wind as he's reporting in the worst of it. And how much longer is Rob going to be in the worst of it?
And that's a great question. He mentioned that Corpus Christi, where Matt is just about to get into the more clear. I wouldn't say clear meaning leave and go check things out. I mean that they'll get drier. Port Lavaca is still so close to that eye wall, and we were saying this is a long, sustained storm. Remember, it's blocked, so it's not moving. It is moving at northwest at 6 miles per hour. So he is not going to be out of that type of wind, probably for the next 2 hours or so. And then it'll start to let up just a little, not just from movement, but just because this storm is going to continue to die. But even as it becomes a tropical storm later today, you still have wind speeds max sustained above 39 miles per hour. And it's going to stay that way through the track. We're seeing a couple of the graphics here, and I thought that was good to see the flash flood watches and, of course, the river flooding, where people could see river flooding. We're already seeing it near Victoria, close to almost San Antonio. This whole region is where we're concerned about rising water beyond this storm. So once that wind starts to subside, then the rain will still keep going. And we've shown this track, but it's so important to see that loop. We rarely see where the icons pass over each other.
Yeah.
But underneath those icons, you would see a full loop-de-loop that this line makes, and then up it goes right through those bays again, because remember, this made landfall after being a tropical storm. Within 48 hours, it was a Category 4 storm, making landfall at Rockport, second at Copano Bay, and then pushing through. It will pass right by where it made landfall again in this current track.
Meaning it will pass by Rob again.
Correct, but this will be late tomorrow, Sunday night into Monday, so we've got time, but it's not going to move from then. So even though it weakens, the eye sits there and it weakens and it weakens, and it'll largely get a little bigger and a little messier looking. But the big shield of rain is going to happen on the north side likely, and that's where some of that inland flooding is going to happen. So the rain's not going to stop. The wind is going to lessen, but it's not going to go away. And then as that storm turns around, remember, the northeast side is going to then come to places like Corpus Christi again, or just north of there. And it will turn back around and then eventually get to Houston. And therefore, that circle where you see the white area, where we are indicating that you'll see more than 10 inches, already have, and up to 35, that's why it's in that circle, because that's under that loop.
And it does. So it looks. When we had the split screen up between Matt and Rob, it looked like Matt was in so much of a better situation.
Yes.
But actually, there are going to be times for Corpus Christi where it will get rough again.
Again, it'll be later, Sunday night, Monday. It could be where the tropical storm turns back around, depending on how tight of a turn it makes. It was looking like a beginner driver when I was looking at that line at the beginning, like a 10-point turn it was trying to make. But now you can see that circle. Corpus Christi is on the very edge of that far outer band, so they're almost feeling similar effects that San Antonio would be, because they're starting to get into the heavier rain bands. But you also see how it's stacked, where the heaviest rain, the yellows and oranges and the reds, are coming up from Houston, almost to Austin, back to San Antonio. That's where we're going to see that blob form. And I think we have the rainfall, and I wanted to stop it in timing, because anybody that's watching us that happens to be in some of these higher populated areas and they have plans and they say, it's only going to be a tropical storm. I've done that before. I paused it here because I wanted to show you that blob. See that? That's Monday midnight. So Monday midnight, that's over Houston. And we're still seeing heavy rain.
So complacency is the most dangerous thing.
Absolutely, from this point forward. And excitement to get out. I'd say the
right. And by the way, this made landfall as a Category 4 at 10:30 local time. It's still a Category 1. That just shows its strength.
Yep.
After it's been over land for that long.
It is fighting through that friction of the land. It doesn't like that. It's going to kill it eventually. But then even as it stays a tropical storm, tropical storms do significant damage. We go to cover tropical storms. Remember, we're going to have a tropical storm for the next 2 to 3 days.
And this is going to pinball off of the wall of high pressure to the north, which is blocking it, and head back down toward the water, which is warm and is the source of fuel for this thing. So it's a many-headed monster.
Yes, it is.
Or multi-lived monster, yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned fuel, Dan, and that's also actually a big part of this storm on another topic, because we have Rebecca Jarvis here talking about the economic impact of Hurricane Harvey. We have so many oil refineries out in the Gulf, this area severely impacted, and when it's impacted, the entire country is impacted economically.
This is the heart of our country's energy infrastructure. This is where we get a huge amount of our gasoline, where the oil goes to be refined. 45% of our country's refining capacity happens in this location. A third of all of our refining capacity for the entire country is right in this storm's path. So you're going to see, whether you live in that area or you live far away on either coast of the country, you're going to see an impact in your gasoline prices, spiking anywhere from 5 cents to 25 cents. But one of the things that you've been talking about here that I also think is really key is to keep in mind the families, the homeowners in this area where the storm is just beginning. But for families and homeowners in this location, some of that pain and impact is only just beginning. We heard from Eva that a number of people were leaving their communities, being evacuated. They didn't have a lot of time to prepare. There are over 200,000 homes at risk right now from this storm. As those families return, when it's safe to return, they're going to be dealing with a number of issues going forward, and those issues oftentimes take months to work out. Homeowners insurance, as many families know, does not cover, in most cases, flooding or hurricane damage. You need flood insurance in order to cover that. In order for the flood insurance to kick in, it usually takes about 30 days even to kick in. So families are going to be returning to this. They're also going to be returning to those questions of mold, broken pipes, the downed trees. These are all things that add up to costs. And Rob earlier compared this storm to Hurricane Rita. That storm cost $8 billion in the end. Somewhere between $1 and $2 billion in property damages are expected from this storm, and that's only based on what's happening as far as the wind. So again, that emotional impact, that human toll, it's only just beginning here.
Rebecca, when I went to school for meteorology, a lot of them ended up going and getting masters and then going into courtrooms years after events because they have to prove to people as a meteorologist that it either was flooding or wind. And this is how long it takes. These are actual jobs that people do years after events, and that's why, again, it's not just this initial hit and then a couple of weeks later you start to build again. It can take years.
And if you think about it, we are 12 years away. Tuesday, 12-year anniversary from Katrina. There are still people in New Orleans dealing with the aftermath of that storm. Still people in this area where we are, which is the New York City area, dealing with Sandy. So these events have ramifications that roll on and on for years.
They knock out infrastructure. Families, your home is your biggest asset for most families. Families are still reeling, in some cases, from Hurricane Katrina. There are still people from various storms in the past that are still dealing with this years and years out. Also, Texas, let's talk about how important Texas is to our economy as a country. 3.5% of our GDP comes from this area. There are 4.5 million workers who are in the area where this storm is impacted. So again, you can't understate the human toll, the economic toll that continues to roll forward well beyond this storm.
Chief Business and Economics correspondent Rebecca Jarvis helping us understand one aspect of the magnitude of this storm. Thank you. Let's get it out to ABC's Steve Osunsami, who's in New Orleans this morning. We've just been talking about how we're approaching the 12-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which was so massively devastating for that city. As we head into another hurricane hitting this part of the world, what is the sense on the ground there? We know that they're not expected to take much of a blow, but is there nervousness in your world there?
I think there's a great deal of nervousness, even though city officials and parish officials have a more optimistic forecast in terms of the rainfall totals, even though the rainfall totals are now less than what they were expecting a day or two ago. They're not coming out and telling people that they're in the clear. There is definitely a nervousness here. As you just mentioned, there are neighborhoods in this city that still haven't recovered, that still look like they did in 2005. There are still homes with the big, X's on them, lots that haven't been filled, that are just grown over. All of those effects of Katrina. So Katrina is something that's always going to be on the minds of residents here when it comes to storms. And let's not forget, what happened here in New Orleans with Katrina was really a man-made disaster. What happened were the levees broke, the pumps failed, the city was not able to move the water out to keep the water away. And so that is the primary focus of city officials and parish officials, to make sure that their pumps are working and able to move the water out. You know, as I said just a few minutes ago, it doesn't take much of a rain at all to flood certain streets here. We had a rainfall a few weeks ago, I think it was August 5th. That was just a regular rainstorm, and they had floods here. So watching this storm come through, they're taking it very seriously. They're very cautious about this. Everyone is a little bit anxious. And again, you mentioned that anniversary. You know, we were here, I was here during Katrina, during the flooding, probably for about 2 or 3 months. I saw firsthand, just as many of our staff did, what happened to this city. So many weeks without power, not able to use running water. There were signs that were telling us that, you know, you couldn't drink the water. Most of the restaurants were closed. People were evacuated. You know, no one wants to relive that on any scale. And so, of course, people are very, very cautious about this.
Oh, it makes so much sense. So many lessons learned, but still more to learn. Steve Osinsami, thank you for the latest there from New Orleans. And we certainly have a lot to get to as a flash flood warning now is in place. Ginger just
went into place in Houston.
In Houston, Texas, and that's where we find our Victor Okendo, who can give us the latest update from there, because the storm is headed in your direction, Victor.
Amy, as you guys just mentioned, that flash flood warning, all of our phones just went off with that alert. Flash flood warning in effect for the next few hours. Here, the rain and wind have really picked up in the last hour or so. That will be the story throughout the rest of the day, the rest of the weekend, and as you guys have been mentioning, throughout most of next week as well. But as of right now, Houston's mayor telling his residents not to evacuate, to steer clear of the roads. We're right next to a major roadway here, 59 South, and outside of just a few cars, the roadway is pretty much empty. And not just because it's so early in the morning. Last night we were driving around during rush hour and we were coasting along. And we should mention that in our time here, throughout the restaurants and the supermarkets that we've gone to, virtually a ghost town. So it does look like people are heeding the warnings here and staying home and staying put. The major concern here in Houston is the flooding. When we talk about flooding in this area, think of Tropical Storm Allison in 2001. That just totally devastated this city. More than 3 feet of rain in some spots in a very short amount of time, destroying tens of thousands of homes, even more cars, and claiming 23 lives. Since then, the city has spent a lot of money and a lot of time. We're talking about nearly $1 billion to shore up the bayous, to make sure that they don't overflow like they did in 2001 and just demolish and wreck these neighborhoods. Tropical Storm Allison, the first tropical storm to ever have its name retired. Here in Houston, over the next few days, they are just bracing for some heavy rainfall.
Yes, but as you touched on this, and Ginger's been hammering it home all morning, the big enemy there in Houston and many of the cities nearby is complacency. People need to understand that if they go out and drive around to see what's going on, there is the likelihood they could run into flash flooding. Victor Okendo in Houston, thank you for your reporting. We'll be talking to you repeatedly throughout this morning. Let's go now, though, to the White House and ABC's Mary Bruce. Mary, how keenly aware are members of the Trump administration that they are facing the first major natural disaster of this young presidency?
Dan, this is a big test for this presidency, and they are aware of that. This president has never had to deal with a situation like this before. Now, the president, acutely aware of that, is keeping a very close eye on this storm, urging everyone to stay safe. You just take a quick look at his Twitter feed and you can see that he has been talking out frequently in recent days and overnight, urging everyone to follow those warnings of state and local officials, to heed everyone's advice to try and stay safe through this storm. Now, the president overnight did go ahead and approve a request from the governor of Texas, signing that disaster declaration that frees up federal funds to help assist in any recovery, to help fulfill any of their needs. The president, of course, is actually not here at the White House. He's over at Camp David spending the weekend there, but he is with his team, receiving regular updates from his FEMA administrator, from his national security, his homeland security team. The president, we know, will be participating in a teleconference later this morning at 11 a.m. our time to receive further updates on this. But this is a big test for this president, and they are aware of that. They've said that the president is going to try and get down on the ground to visit Texas early next week. But of course, that can be a bit of a delicate issue for any president following any kind of natural disaster like this. Of course, they want to get down, see the aftermath firsthand, be in touch with those who've been affected. But when resources are stretched thin, of course, the president also doesn't want to become a burden on those as they try and recover and move forward.
All right, Mary, a delicate dance indeed for the president's administration here in dealing with the aftermath and actually the storm itself throughout the days and, well, several days to come, according to Ginger, right? This won't be over until mid-next week.
Not going to be over until midweek, at least. And so I want to take you to the maps just to give you an update. 85-mile-per-hour winds now, so it has continued to weaken. I hate using that word weaken because when I see a storm like this on shore with still a significant eye, there are still strong wind gusts that happen for Victoria or just west of Port Lavaca. But you do see on that wider picture of the radar some of those outer rain bands taking some of the energy. This is where the heaviest rain is going. That's why we've got that flash flood warning in Houston. That's something we are concerned about on a regular day, let alone when you know that this is going to happen for days ahead. You see all that moisture, the tropical moisture fueling in near Galveston there, up around Houston. It's going to start wrapping back into that storm, and that's when this becomes the #1 impact as a rainmaker. The flash flood warnings are the parts you want to pay closest attention to. The watches go all the way through this weekend and include Austin and San Antonio. We're going to easily see in Austin 10+ inches of rain. That's what that white area indicates. Up to 35 inches. We already have one report of 16 inches, a river gauge that has spiked almost 40 feet near Victoria. That's going to be the problem too. And when Rebecca was talking about areas that see inundation after, and then you have to do all the insurance adjustments, that flooding is going to happen in these river towns where, hey, we didn't get hit by the immediate part of the storm. We're not in the eye wall. You still have that potential. So there's a large area that goes all the way into southwest Louisiana that could still easily get 5 to 7 inches of rain.
Okay, the clouds above us are starting to rotate. Okay, the clouds above us are starting to rotate.
Need to get out there, and this is a look at exactly what we were talking about right here near downtown, just outside downtown Houston, outside our studios at Allen Parkway and Stanford. And I tell you what, usually we're so used to the water rising out of its banks at Buffalo Bayou and then inundating Allen Parkway. Today it was a different story. Stanford Street, as you travel south on it from Allen Parkway, is elevated. We just had water rushing down that elevation and spilling into Allen Parkway and meeting the road there, creating waves. And it was like, you know, nothing I'd ever seen before out there. And I've been out there quite a bit for different storms here.
Yeah, that's a usual suspect where that happens. Let's give you some of the problem spots, and they're everywhere, but really in particular, entire cities. Dickinson, south of us, they're telling people the roads are impassable there. Stay off the roads. You could probably say that for most of the Houston area, but the city of Dickinson saying stay off the roads. As we take a look at the Gulf Freeway and FM 518, you can see there it is just treacherous. Also, the city of Pasadena has ordered a shelter in place, once again because the roads are impassable. In case you have not heard, there has been tragedy, a fatality tonight on the southwest side at Warren's, getting pounded by more rain. Tell us what's going on. We're going to get to Josh in just a second. He's been talking to people who are in the parking lot there and even employees who've been down there for quite some time. We know how popular Buc-ee's is. You can see the shot, and yes, oh my gosh, look at that. Josh, it's gotten worse just in the last 15 minutes, hasn't it?
I don't know if you guys just were able to hear that, but I mean, in the last 10 seconds, there was this freakish, you know, made your skin jump lightning strike. I mean, it is, Eric, just walk with me for 2 seconds here. I mean, I don't want to walk too far outside the awning, but you can see just the force of this rain just coming down off the Buc-ee's canopy here. There's so many people here who pulled off the side. Well, there you go. Pulled off the side of the road because they really didn't feel safe. Now, I just spoke to you a couple of minutes ago. I said I suspected that a lot of people were watching that Mayweather-McGregor fight, you know, probably went in there and it wasn't raining too bad. And they came out and, uh-oh, one of those guys is Raul, who watched the fight and
multiple rescues throughout the city trying to help folks get out. By tying up those 911 calls, you could potentially be limiting somebody's access to 911 who really, really needs that life-saving service. So we are asking folks, please be careful when you decide to make those 911 calls this evening.
Let's talk about the areas feeling the hardest impact, and you guys are getting the most calls from, both for people who feel like they're in trouble on the road, and then are you guys having any high water rescues that you're having to respond to perhaps at a residence?
Yeah, so we've got quite a few high water rescues going on, both in residential areas as well as in underpasses as well. So we do have that going on really across the city. So we are asking folks, again, you know, reserve 911 for those emergency calls only so that we can dispatch our assets. We have pre-staged assets and had things ready to go for a few days now because we knew that this threat was here. So we've been working with Public Works and the police department and the fire department and even our fleet management department to have all of these assets ready to go. They're out there, they're doing their job, but we really need folks to not put themselves in a situation that is going to need a first responder to come out to them. Please, please stay at home.
Michael, thank you for that information. They are being inundated with a lot of calls. A lot of people are very afraid tonight. Let's switch to Jeff Lindner with the Harris County Flood Control. Jeff, I know you're very busy tonight. Tell us about where we are headed. We've heard about the Barker Reservoir that is rising to levels that we have not seen before. This is unprecedented, is it not?
The scope of what we're facing right now is certainly something that we haven't faced in a long time. And before we get to Barker, I want to focus on the southeast part of the county right now because this is where we have extraordinarily dangerous flooding going on. We are getting called into our phone bank at the Flood Control District of people climbing into their attics on either side of I-45 between downtown Houston and Clear Lake. And so the flooding is extremely dangerous down in those areas. This is along Berry Bayou, Beamer Ditch, Turkey Creek, portions of Clear Creek. We have major flooding going on Clear Creek, Horsepin Bayou, Vince Bayou, Little Vince Bayou in Pasadena. Pretty much the entire southeast side of Harris County has had anywhere between 13 and 15 inches of rain in 3 hours. That is incredible rainfall. It far exceeds and surpasses our 500-year level event. On top of that, we're seeing widespread flooding and inundation occurring on portions of Hunting Bayou, in the downtown area on Buffalo Bayou, on Brays Bayou, on Keegan's Bayou. Virtually every watershed in this county, minus the extreme east side, is facing very significant flooding right now. So the only comparison that I can draw to at this point is going to be Tropical Storm Allison. Now, we haven't reached those rainfall totals that we had with Allison in those big totals, but given the gravity of the situation that we are facing right now, Allison is really the only storm that I could compare it to. And in the southeast part of the county, some of our channels have exceeded the Tropical Storm Allison levels.
13 to 15 inches just on the southeast side. So what do you do from your standpoint? I mean, do you sit back and just kind of wait until this clears? I mean, they're really, your hands are tied, aren't they?
There's absolutely nothing that we can do right now, and we are, we're hearing the phone calls that are coming in to 911 and people requesting help. And it's even very difficult for first responders to respond right now. The level of flooding that we are dealing with is tremendous. And so virtually everything in the southeast part of Harris County and into the central part of the county is paralyzed at this moment. And so, what we're having to tell people is if you feel like you're in danger, you need to get as high as you can possibly get in your house. And we first responders will try to get to you as soon as they can, but as you can imagine, we are being overwhelmed by phone calls right now of people needing help. And under absolutely no circumstances do people need to be in vehicles or even attempting to drive. It is impossible to drive right now in this city and this county.
Jeff, I know you're not responsible for coordinating the emergency response, but at what point, I remember with Tropical Storm Allison, at some point military trucks rolling into, or military style trucks rolling into some neighborhoods to rescue people. Have you heard, as you're trying to coordinate with emergency response teams, what that response is like and if that's being put into place now?
Well, we do have Texas military forces here at the EOC. Obviously, we have been preparing for this for days, for the hurricane part of this, and now we're dealing with this part. And so the good news is a lot of the response agencies were already in play here, had resources in place. But how quickly this has come on this evening with the almost 15 inches of rain in 3 hours is overwhelming everything.
Jeff Lindner, Jeff, I know you got a busy night. We appreciate you taking our call, giving us the scope of what you are facing. It is overwhelming. We go to David Bannon now, the fire marshal in Pasadena, and the stage there was a shelter in place there. David, explain what you're facing there.
Facing pretty heavy flood conditions. We're attempting as many rescues as we can. We have numerous people on a waiting list with the limited resources we have at this time, and we're just trying to prioritize each one of the rescues by medical and just working our way through.
What kind of calls are you getting? What do they want rescued from?
Well, we have a lot of vehicles that were out and they're stalling out the water, and the water's rising. We're also having a lot of water that's, rising and then feeding into, the houses and structures. So it's just a combination of
Oh, we may have lost David Bannon, the fire marshal in Pasadena. You heard him describe they are being inundated like many other agencies tonight with 911 calls. People either need to be rescued from their car or from their homes, and they're trying to get to these people as quickly as possible. But even for the emergency crews, it is hard to get around, and there's so many calls, it is tough to get anywhere soon.
Let's check in with David Paul. David, you know, we were talking with the flood control district, Jeff Lindner there, and he was telling us how southeast Harris County, how things are so bad there, and so many people who are calling them needing help and assistance. Talk to us about what it's like in that area in southeast Harris County.
Well, you've got water just going into dozens and dozens of homes down there right now. The roads are absolutely impassable. You've got people that water's coming in right now to the homes. They're scared. If you can listen to us, you heard what Jeff said. Just try to get to a highest spot in your house as you can. If you have to get up into the attic, get up onto the roof. Do it. If to get yourself out of the water. Because that's the situation that southeast Harris County is facing. You heard Jeff mention that in many of the watersheds right now, the bayous are higher. They're surpassing the levels that they had in Tropical Storm Allison in 2001. So now here we are. We're right at the crest of reaching Allison levels and perhaps going past Allison levels just tonight. And this may go on for a couple of more days with rain chances staying with us. There is a new tornado warning. I just wanted to give you a quick update.